Welcome to another edition of Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner. Today's show features a triple threat. Joe McGee is a writer, producer, and director of 4 films. His latest is entitled Reflections. Please welcome to the show, Joe McGee. Joe, how are you?
Rich, I'm well. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I look forward to our conversation.
Oh, yeah, well, I have plenty to talk about. I have 4 different pages of questions, and there's only a half hour, though. That's the only thing I'm a little bummed out about, but you know what? I'm going to have you come back. So the first question is, I'm going to start off with your most recent feature, Reflections. What's the premise of the movie?
You know, Rich, I could talk to you probably about hours. There's a lot of backstory, a lot of character foreshadowing, and then as the kind of film progresses, there's kind of a shift in the plot. I'll give you a quick Reader's Digest version. Basically, it's about a guy named Andy, and Andy is targeted by Red Star Telecommunications. Now, what Red Star Telecommunications is, or what you'll basically see what it is, it's a front for the Russian Federation Army. It's not a real company. Now, this company is run by Duncan Reinstein, who controls the Russian Federation Army, and he needs Andy for experiments for alien DNA and splicing. Andy is very important because his father, which Andy didn't know, was actually one of the experiments in his prior companies. Now, that's just one side of the story. We have the news, we have the FBI, we have the CIA. Everyone wants to bring Duncan Reinstein down, and basically the characters come together to make that happen. That's a short Reader's Digest version.
Wow. If that's the abridged version, I can only imagine what the full version is. Was it an 8-hour movie?
It's actually a 220-page screenplay, surprisingly. It's going to be probably about a 2.5-hour film feature.
Well, you know what I loved? Because I saw the teaser trailer, and I'm going to tell you why I love that trailer. It's probably one of my favorites because it does exactly what a teaser trailer is supposed to do. It's supposed to tease the audience into wanting to see the movie. Sometimes I go to a movie, and you could see the whole movie in the trailer. I'm like, okay, well, why even bother going to see it? Because I already know the beginning, the middle, and the end. And with your movie, it has just enough. It intrigued me just enough to say, you know what, I have to find out what's going on. Now that you told me what the movie's about, I definitely need to see this movie. What it reminded me of is there's a movie called Parasite that's out. It's a South Korean movie. It's up for all these awards, and I hope it wins Best Picture because to me it was one of the favorite. But when I saw the trailer, I said, what is going on? And when I saw it, it was nothing what the trailer made it out to be, but it had just enough to get me into the theater and have me sit, get my popcorn, and enjoy it. So your movie is doing the same thing to me. So when is the release date?
So right now I'm actually still filming. Winter, hopefully it's not that harsh here in Connecticut is where I'm mostly filming. I'm hoping to be wrapped up end of December. However, you know, a lot of the shots are inside, some are outside, exterior. So depending on how the snow occurs, we may need to push that back. But I'm hoping to be done filming in December of this year. The film should be out later in 2020.
All right, very good. Well, as I mentioned in the intro, you're a triple threat. You're a writer, producer, and director. So I have a 2-part question. Who was your biggest influence in film growing up, and who would you recommend to upcoming filmmakers to watch?
Yeah, that's a loaded question right there.
That's another half hour right there.
Yeah, it could be another half hour right there. I'll kind of sum it up, though. Probably a lot of inspirations growing up, and as far as the film world, I really liked a lot of Tony Scott films. You know, he was very one of my favorite. I mean, I watched a lot of films, and that really inspired me to do more. In later years, like David Lynch was another one that really kind of gave you more thoughts and thinking as far as plots. One of
my all-time favorites is Blue Velvet.
Oh, yes.
I love that movie. But what I like about David Lynch, you brought his name up, is that he lets you come up with the ending. He goes, it's up to you. Whatever you want the ending to be, you know. What do you think? And he did that with Mulholland Drive, and I think he did it with Lost Highway.
Which Lost Highway is one of my favorite movies as well. Yeah, I love that film. But as far as what other type of films to watch now, for me, I like a lot of foreign films, a lot of French movies. I really like was Crimson Rivers, District B13, High Tension is a French horror movie.
Yes, Hot Tension.
Yeah, Hot Tension. Yeah, so I follow a lot of foreign films. I really give a really appreciation with those type of films.
Well, 2 of my favorite foreign movies I could think of right off the bat were the French movie Emily. I love that movie, but I also love a German movie called Run Lola Run.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Yep.
What
absolutely.
that movie is it's small scene, but it's done 3 different times, and each scene has one second that is different, and it shows how your life can change in 1 second. So I love that movie. I'm a big fan of the foreign movies for one reason, is because they don't have the MPAA hovering over them saying you can't do this, you can't do that, and not everything ends on a positive note. It's more realistic.
Absolutely.
So that's why instead of the Hollywood ending where they're walking away into the sunset, happily ever after, you're like, oh my God, the lead character just died. I think more Hollywood movies are starting to do that now, especially with Game of Thrones and Walking Dead. But for the most part, I love the freedom that foreign movies have.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
All right, so did you ever go to film school, or did you one day just wake up and say, you know what, I want to make a movie, went out and bought a camera like Steven Spielberg did?
You're pretty close. Not exactly the nail on the head, but I'll kind of give you a quick shortened version of this. Writing is my backbone. In high school, Miss Krantz was my English teacher, and at the time, my final composition in English, she told me, Joe, you have a gift. You need to do something. I had one of the highest ratings in school. It took me 16 years later to actually publish my first book called Leadership Lessons Inspired by a 6-Year-Old. It talks about transparencies of raising children and raising corporate teams. So nonfiction.
Yeah.
Now from there, I actually drove down the highway, as we all do. We're in Connecticut right now. But a lot of people on the interstate, I look around. I'm a very visual guy when I'm driving. I look for things. My next book is called The White House is Fake. Yes. And I wrote that on a vision of driving down Interstate 84 in Connecticut. And from there, I actually did some promotions with it. We were in a real police department. We were in a library. We had a limo. We filmed under the highway. So that was kind of the first segue into film. It was around north of 2017. And then I took it really seriously north of 2018 when I did my Letters for Annie, Memories from World War II. We filmed on the real battleship, BB-59, in Fall River, Mass. That's a feature. That's also a novel. And then from there, this is where I'm really going up one scale with Reflections, again, a novel. So what I do is I take my work and I want to visually tell it. I want to see that story come alive. Yeah. Now, most authors, what they'll do is they'll have someone adapt it to a screenplay. I do it myself because I really want people to see, as I write, what story am I want to show people. Like if you're reading a book, you're probably going to develop your own visual picture of what you're reading. So I thought it was important that me as a storyteller, as a creator, as an author, let me show people what I want to actually, when I write, this is what I see. And that's kind of how I fell into filmmaking.
Well, I think that's perfect because most authors hate the adaptation. They want nothing to do with the movie. And probably the most famous is Stephen King in The Shining. Now he's over it. And I saw him at the Bushnell and he was talking about this. He said that Kubrick put a gag order on him and said, you know what, if you badmouth my movie anymore, I'm going to sue you, because he hated that. That was so personal to him. That was more of an autobiography, because Jack Torrance was an alcoholic and he was an alcoholic at the time. And then Kubrick made it into a horror movie, which I have to say I love the Kubrick version. But going back, I do like the book as well, but they're completely different projects. And I understand that, but the problem must be editing. That's what I can only imagine. When you write something on paper and then you have to adapt it to the screen, going back and filming everything, you must say, but I love this scene. I don't want to edit this. But the best thing now, I guess, I'll let you speak for it, is that people can stream movies now. People have DVDs, so you can do the alternate ending, the bonus features, the deleted scenes. Back then, once it was edited, you couldn't do anything. You could never recover it.
Right.
So give me your opinion on that.
Yeah, you're completely right, Rich. One of the things that I love that really excites me, ignites me, and really makes me excited inside is the fact that when I tell a story, music is important. So I have a lot of indie artists supporting this film. Letters for Annie, we had a lot of original music in the soundtrack. This particular film, same thing. I have Brooklyn, New York artists. I have a couple artists in California that are going to be in the movie. The club scene we did, this original music from California. We're actually having original theme songs being developed called Reflections. And not only that, my father, Stephen McGee, he's my composer, and he does a lot of composing for major networks. I'm not going to name them, but we know who they are. And there's a lot of music score. So he's doing the score for my film. So music, visually telling, all of that is important to me. We have a lot of behind the scenes on the DVDs, to your point earlier. Yeah. You're going to see that for the fans. And we're actually doing a little comedy in this film. I'm not going to spoil it, but you'll see what I mean.
Well, one of my all-time favorite horror movies is The Evil Dead. Evil Dead Part 2.
Yes.
And because I love the fact Sam Raimi, who did The Evil Dead, his biggest influence are the Three Stooges. So you could see a lot of comedy in it. And I think that comedy and horror, like everybody, what's the first thing somebody does when they get scared? They laugh nervously. So I think comedy and horror go together. So that's a perfect combination.
And for fans that know me, guess what's in here? Easter eggs.
I love
They're going to
Easter
see
eggs.
some Easter eggs in this film.
All right. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more when we come back with writer, producer, and director Joe McGee on Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner right after this. Welcome back to Nutmeg Chatter presents The Claw's Corner. I have been speaking with writer, producer, and director Joe McGee. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I'm enjoying our conversation. We have a lot to talk about.
Yes, and like I said, you're going to have to come back probably 4 or 5 times because I have a lot to say. And you're an independent filmmaker.
I am.
Right?
That's right, yes.
Well, I want to say I love the freedom of independent filmmaking, and one of my all-time favorites is Lloyd Kaufman from Troma Pictures. He came out with Terror Firmer, Toxic Avenger, but he is constantly talking about getting the money to fund his project. He said that's his biggest problem. Is that a big issue with you?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. Letters for Annie, when I did that, that was a challenge because we filmed on a real battleship, so props were important. I had a real U.S. Navy authentic uniforms that I had to purchase. So that particular movie was funded solely by myself. Reflections, I do have a couple executive producers and associate producers, but I really don't like asking for help, so I didn't do any crowdfunding. This is solely on me. However, this particular film, we are doing sponsorship levels. We could talk about that later if it's appropriate, but that's all I'm offering is basically their logo on my white screen when we do the premieres. Yeah. They had certain packages that'll enable them to do that. But other than that, the core funding is strictly by myself and my producers.
That's impressive. Now, another issue that he said he has is getting the permit to film. And he is known for getting the shot and filming until the cops arrive. And to me, it's a guerrilla filmmaking at its best. But there is also a movie called Swingers, which starred...
yeah, I know who you mean. I can't think of his name offhand.
He directs all the Spider-Mans and Iron Mans. But there's a scene in there where...
Is it Michael Maid?
No.
Not Michael Maid.
We're going to cut that part out.
Okay.
Because we'll talk about that later, but cut out the Swingers part. Anyway, getting back to the interview, Joe.
Yes.
I just finished watching the movie My Name is Dolomite starring Eddie Murphy. And now I don't know if you saw this or heard about it.
No.
But it's the story of comedian, rapper, and actor Rudy Ray Moore. And what it was he was a comedian. Everybody said, "Oh no, you're horrible. You can't do this." And he started coming out with records of his raps. And then nobody wanted to buy it from no record company wanted to buy the record, so he just went out on his own. And then a character named Dolomite became so popular, so they said, well, let's make a movie out of it. No studio ever wanted to pick up that movie. They said, come on. So he funded all of his own money, funded the picture, and it became such a sensation that now it's a cult classic. And I just saw it the other day. Eddie Murphy made a movie about it, and I have to say it's the ultimate success story, proving that if you want something bad enough, determination and patience and persistence pay off. So it sounds like that you're on the right track with that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have a lot of fun on set. That's one of the important things I try to really, really cheer the actors on is, we're always going to have behind the scenes. We're always going to have fun. The problem with a lot of the Hollywood pictures is, and this is a big problem, whether they don't have the permission to do that, is credits, right? So if you're in my film and you're a background actor or you're an extra, you're going to get a credit in my end credit of the film. A lot of Hollywood pictures, they don't care about background. It's unfortunate, but I care about everyone because without background, your picture doesn't happen.
Exactly. Now, are you more old school with special effects? I'm not sure if your budget entitles you to have CGI. Or do you like to go on the computer and say, you know what, we can add this in later? Do you like the freedom of that, or do you like the old school? I like the old, real car crash, or the real, makeup, instead of, with the blood coming down the face instead of, adding it in later.
It's a great question. So on my sets, I'm fortunate enough to have award-winning Phil Skippy Adams. He's one of the makeup people in Connecticut. He travels all around, does my blood work for me.
Oh, wow.
Liberty Gleese is another one. And we really do have real blood work here. Like in the club scene, we have bullet holes in people. We had a machete, take a wrist to the machete, a machete to the wrist. So we have like the hand shifted, and we need special effects to do that. So we definitely use that. There's obviously a few CGI effects we're adding, like, simple muzzle flashes or, gun popping noises or, there is going to be a car crash scene, but we're actually going to be flipping a car this month as well. I really like realism, though, to answer your question.
Yeah, well, I guess you did, because basically every example I brought up, you just did. So you like the real car crash. You like
yes.
So I personally love that, too. But I think that there's several special effects artists. Tom Savini is one, and Rob Bottin's another, where they realize that instead of fighting the establishment, just join up with it. So they work together with CGI. But you could, to me, I could tell. Like, I know, sometimes if it's done really, really well, but I love the old-time 70s movies. I love the old-time 80s movies. And to me, it's just more genuine, much more authentic. But
you're right. There is one scene. Obviously, I don't have access to real jet fighter planes. I have a MiG-29 flying over a tree line. So I have CGI doing that, of course. Yeah. But other than that, you can do what you can do,
Oh, definitely. Now, you mentioned some of these in the beginning, because you're also the writer, producer, and director of 3 other films. So I want to start with The White House is Fake. To me, that is probably the best title of any movie I've ever heard. Tell me a little bit about that. I know you mentioned where you got the inspiration from, but what's the movie about? Yeah,
so this particular one really was more of a short film, really didn't adapt into a feature. But what we did is, in the book, I took certain chapters and we did reenactments for promotion. So what the book is about, the title is elusive. The White House is fake. Some people might immediately think Donald Trump. No, it's not about Trump. Remember the Dwight Eisenhower era, the 1957, the National Federal Highway Act?
Yes.
When he built all the highways? So I tie my fiction around that real event, where in 1957, it's the same year that Dwight Eisenhower basically kept a huge secret from the public eye. Every cabinet after Dwight Eisenhower did the same thing. We're hiding a huge secret from the public. I'm not going to say what it is, but basically what happens, Nelson Conrad was fishing in a local pond in Alexandria, Virginia, and he saw a DOT truck, Department of Transportation, parked under a highway, and the guy was going like this with his finger. I know you can't see it down there, but he's twirling it in the air, and he thought that was strange, so he ran up in the woods, and he watched a secret tunnel emerge, a U.S. General, Secretary of Defense, U.S. Marine. They have a secret meeting with the DOT under the highway. Guess what? A limo comes, takes him away. He's like, what the heck just happened? Yeah. So he goes to the town hall. He wants to know the records of that highway. What happened there? And then he meets a guy called Mr. Hutchison, and I'll just stop there. But it's very intriguing, a story. If you like plot twists, you like unexpected events, this is your type of novel to get. It's a novel and also kind of a short adaptation of a film.
I'm not going to say my guess might be aliens, but I'm not going to say anything. That's all I'm going to say, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do read a lot of different things, and I'm going to watch that and see where it goes, where it takes me. I don't want to give anything away either, because I really don't know anything. So you mentioned that you write the book first. So you write it as a novel, and then you adapt it to a screenplay, and then you direct it. So
that's my style, yes.
So I'm very interested in this, because how do you start out? So when you come down with you have an idea. So you just sit down. Do you write it longhand? Do you start typing it up? Like, how often?
All in my head, Rich. So what happens is when I think of a story, all of it, about 98% of it is in my head. What I got to worry about is character development, plot twist. Yeah. So with The White House is Fake, it's all an internal memory dump. Once I have it in my head, I have the hook, I have the twist. I just got to develop it, and then I put it on paper. So this is not all, basically it's all in my head, and I'm just freehanding it, and I wrote The White House is Fake pretty quickly, considering probably in a good about between 4 and 6 months it was done, off to the editor and out, and not really a whole lot of rewrites. I was really comfortable of what direction I wanted to go with it, and that's my style. Like, I could wake up at 3 in the morning, I might send myself an email, remember to do this. Now, with Reflections, some of that was based on real dreams, believe it or not, my dreams, and they're in my movie now. How weird is that? I guess it's weird. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, we will find out when we watch it. Reflections coming soon to a theater near you. If
That's
not,
right.
You can rent it or stream it. Now, there's another movie you did. We talked about Letters for Annie, but I want to get into the B-29 Dream Girl, the story of Gerald Muller. Is that based on a true person?
It is. Now, that one's not out yet, so this is my next project immediately after Reflections. Now, how this happened, I released Letters for Annie in 2018. As far as the novel and the film, I had a message. I can't remember if it was an email or a Facebook message from a woman named Nicole in Florida. She said, Joe, I read Letters for Annie. I loved it. I have my father, who is Gerard Muller, served in the United States Air Force in World War II. She said, I have about 700 letters. Do you mind writing about my dad? I said, hey, I'd love to.
Wow.
Can you mail me the letters? She sent me the original letters. That's being developed right after Reflections. Same thing with Letters for Annie, based on real World War II letters. I had about 400 of them, and I developed a story. I went to the National Archives in D.C. to help with certain things, deck logs that I can't find, things like that.
All right, so a question for you then is, I know Dan Brown, who did Da Vinci Code.
Yep.
He said when he writes a book, he will do a year of research before he even begins writing. What's your process?
That's a good technique. Mine's a little bit different, only because now I'm not really entirely certain of how much he had prior to going into research. For me, with my stuff, I have pretty much a lot of it in front of me, so I really don't need that much time. Because I could basically develop my story based on the letters. So my time going to the National Archives was probably the biggest, and then putting dates and brothers in a certain order. So I only needed probably about 2 to 4 months, putting the rest of the puzzles I don't have together.
That's not bad.
And that's kind of how my approach on. And then we called Letters for Annie historic fiction, only because it's very difficult to write a nonfiction, because the letters, I have a time, place, date. Sometimes I don't know what happened before or after. So I added a little bit of fiction to make the story more enjoyable. A lot of people can appreciate that, even historians and people I've talked to. Now with B29 Dream Girl, I may go nonfiction. It all depends how much data I can find, though, on that one.
I laugh when people get mad when they see a movie. Well, that's not true. That part isn't true. It's like, if you want to watch something, watch a documentary. That's what I do. Whenever I see a movie based on a true story or inspired by a true story, I'll watch the movie, enjoy it for what it is, but then I'll watch a documentary and it's like, okay, that's true. That because the last one I did that with was Ford versus Ferrari, and I said, oh, come on, that never happened. That didn't happen. That movie was very, very accurate. It was such a great movie. Christian Bale, I don't think he's going to get it because he always wins an Oscar every year, but he was so good in that movie, and he had every tick, every nuance. I mean, whenever he gets into a role, he becomes that character.
Right.
So that's but that's what I do. It's like, I hate when people get mad, like, oh, that's not true. Of course, you can't make everything completely. You got to change some of the facts to fit it into the format of the film. So I understand that. Well, we're going to be back with writer, producer, and director Joe McGee on Nutmeg Chatter Presents The Claw's Corner right after this. Welcome back to Nutmeg Chatter Presents The Claw's Corner. I have been speaking with writer, producer, and director Joe McGee. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I'm enjoying our conversation. We're talking about so many interesting things here tonight.
And I have so much more to ask. All right, so as I mentioned several times, you're a triple threat. What do you enjoy most? What do you find most satisfying? Writing, producing, or directing?
Oh, that's a tough one. That really is a tough one. I'm probably going to say, if I had to pick one, I'm going to say writing, because writing is my passion, my fire, then followed probably by telling the story, directing it, and visually showing it into a film adaptation. But writing, for me, that's the most powerful use of your mind and really telling your story, and that's really resonates well with me.
Yeah. Now, do you enter your films into festivals? And
I do.
What are some of your favorites?
Yeah, so there's a lot. With Letters for Annie, we entered in many festivals. That's again not that old. It's 2018, so there's still a lot of film festivals that's in. I'm still waiting to hear back from. But I've won a couple awards for Letters for Annie.
Congratulations.
Metro Film Festival winner, Liftoff Sessions finalist. And I'm waiting on a lot more. What with Reflections, it's Russian themed, so I want Russian to see me. I want Russian to know who I am. So it's going to go to Russia. It's going to go to the Boston International Film Festival, a couple in New York.
We have a rebel here.
We have a rebel. No, seriously. Now, if they did select my film and did show it in a Russian film festival in front of an audience, I would go to Moscow or St. Petersburg, wherever it is. I'm going to go because I want to represent the film, because it's very important to me. So that is really true. And now what's good about the folks that are Russian that are going to watch this, I had two actors who actually, I gave them lines, and I wanted them to speak them in Russian because they could. And I'm going to subtitle in English. Just probably about a minute or two. It makes it more authentic.
Yeah.
And, we have real Russian officer jackets that that you're going to see in the film that are authentic. I actually I don't know if anybody does this, maybe it's me, but anytime I get a jacket, I'm interested. I search the pockets. I actually found stuff in these coats. Not nothing like top secret or anything, but I found like a prayer. It was in Russian. It was like a prayer ribbon, like this long, like, and they had it in their pocket, and they forgot to take it out when they shipped it to me.
Now, do you have a full crew when you're filming the movie? Do you have?
It depends on the set and who's available. Obviously, makeup when needed. Special effects will come. Myself behind the camera. We have our audio, our sound. We'll have our script supervisor, depending on the set, production designer, and wardrobe is mainly by me, but that's really the core. Is you have your sound, your video, any makeup or fight sequences, fight coordinators, that type of thing.
All right. So, do you use a lot of the same actors for your movies, or do you have an audition process?
I do have an audition process. This film is so big, I kid you not, we're up to 60, maybe 70 people in Reflections.
Now, this is Reflections.
Reflections.
Okay.
Now, from Letters for Annie, there's a couple people that are coming back because I love them. Tommy Fury, he's from Southington, and he plays Vladimir Belinsky, Russian, obviously.
Yeah.
And he's so into character. You probably remember him in the trailer. He was the one with kind of pacing back and forth.
I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah.
And he played in my film Letters for Annie, Tony Lombardo, and I wanted him back for Reflections, and he gladly accepted. So there's probably about maybe 5, 6, 7 that were in Letters that are in Reflections, but primarily cast is so large, I have a lot of new people too.
Right. Now, if someone is interested in auditioning, how can they get in touch with you?
I can give them my email. Can I say my email?
Go
my
right
email
ahead.
is jmcgee@mcgeeproductions.us. Make sure you do .us, not .com. And they can simply email me. I'll be auditioning for B29 probably sometime 2021.
And where are you located out of?
I'm in Connecticut and New Jersey. I'm kind of travel between two, mostly in Connecticut. So what we do with Reflections, we film primarily in Connecticut. Connecticut Transit gave us a brand new bus to use. Thank you, Connecticut Transit. But basically, we filmed in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Pennsylvania so far for Reflections. So I film mostly in New England. So I do get a lot of people that travel from, Mass, Rhode Island, even Maine, that are in my film, Reflections.
All right. So we talked about so much here. You talked about, your writing, producing, directing. You have 4 films altogether right now. After Reflections, do you have something, I'm sure you already do, knowing how you work, do you have something in mind that's going to be coming up next after Reflections that you'll be started working on right after that? Or?
Yeah, I have my B29. That's always my plan. I got to adapt. But I have a surprise. There's going to be a film.
Can we make it a Nutmeg Chatter Presents Claw's Corner exclusive?
Absolutely. I'll give you a quick Reader's Digest version of what it is.
My new favorite magazine, Reader's Digest.
So, and this is true in billions and billions and billions of years from now. Guess what's going to happen? The sun is going to die. It's going to become red. It's going to die. What happens to the people? What happens to the ocean? I'm going to tell a story about a scientist that's living in the future who's really up against darkness. I might call it darkness. I might call it When the Sun Dies. It's going to be kind of a short novel / short film. It's going to be fitted in between B29 right before that. It's either going to be called Darkness or When the Sun Dies. So I'm going to talk to a lot of scientists, a little fact-finding, because I really want to make it as true as can be. What do we know now? What possible technology will we have in the future that may be able to, fix our problem? Yeah. The sun's going to die. That's a huge problem. So that's what I'm going to be working on as well.
Sounds like a real uplifting movie.
Yes, absolutely. My work always is. It always has some suspense, intrigue, and all kinds of madness. So Evil Russians now with Reflections. So.
From evil Russians to the earth just dying.
Absolutely.
Simply ceasing to exist.
I'm quite the romantic, ain't I?
That's going to be the ultimate rom-com. So where can people find your work?
Yeah, they can find me at McGeeProductions.us. That's kind of like my flagship website. If you go to YouTube, I'm on a YouTube channel called McGee Productions. You can also find me to follow Reflections at ProjectChameleon.us. The full title of Reflections is Reflections Project Chameleon. That's the code name for the project. That's where people can find me.
All right, very good. Well, Joe, thank you very much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
You have to come back.
I will. My pleasure to come back anytime you want, Rich.
All right. Well, that wraps up another edition of Nutmeg Chatter Presents The Claw's Corner. I want to thank my guest, writer, producer, and director, Mr. Triple Threat, Joe McGee. I would also like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in each week. Enjoy your day, everyone.